Okay. Okay, this is going to be me just going over some of the basics of how to use the RTS builder editor and stuff. So let's go. Okay, this is the RTS main screen. This is what you come up with when you've loaded up the editor. Okay, so here's all our tabs. So that's where you go to building, units, buildings, actions, damage, doodad, maps, missions, factions, assets, project, sprites, briefings. Okay, so let's start with the project. Right? You'd go here and you define some basic stuff. This is where you'd publish your project. You decide you want to make a new one. You want to load a project. Here you'd select the project. When you save it, it will be automatically saved to a folder that is C/games with an uppercase G / the name of your RTS. In this case, the default is Awesome RTS, which is just a template for anyone to build off of. It's not really balanced or anything like that. It's more a demo of how to use the engine, right? Okay, so you can see all these things. This is the name of your resource. This is your campaign names, your faction names, right? Very generic, just in there, nothing special. Okay, so how best next on this? So then we got the assets tab, right? Here you would go through and you would go to whatever folder you've got your assets in, and you click it, load it in, and it will recognize. So it's gonna, if it's got a PNG file for your graphics, your sprite sheets, it will recognize that, and that's all your graphics have to be in PNG, and it'll just load those in, and then you will define where it goes, and then it will know what to do with them. So you just load the PNGs that way. Your WAV files, what is it? PCMI WAV file. Right? Yeah, it's the PCMI WAV file is for your sound effects, MP3 for your music, and all your graphics are PNGs. Right? So sprites over here is a way where you would, how to put it? If you want to take a sprite and you've only got, what's the word for it? Well, you want to take it from being one frame of animation, X frames of animation, but only facing one direction up. It has to start in up position, otherwise it won't work. It'll take this, it'll chop that up, and then if you do a little cropping, it'll work properly because it's easier to do with the right angles that way. Briefings, this is here where you would write in the briefing info for a given mission. You put the name down here, whatever the mission name is. You save it, all that. So after that, let's go to factions. So factions here, you name your faction, you put in, you select buildings from the list you've already defined, add them to the list of buildings for that faction. Same with units, actions, damage effects. This is your generic construction image, whatever you've chosen, right? Whatever graphic you gave it. This is how much of a harvester load you'd get. This is your max number of total units you can have. This is the campaign name. So you have a fair amount of customization there if you want. Okay, let's go over here to units. Right? So on this, you've got a whole bunch of information, right? So we got your name of the unit, the graphic name that's in the listing you've got for it, the damage effect it uses, so when it gets hit, what's the visual effect that should come off, how much damage it does with its attack, its fire rate, its action lifespan, so how long the action is supposed to last, what kind of action it releases, what kind of action type, so is it a ground unit, air unit, right, a builder, or is it a healer type, right, or a harvester. So, well, the kind of actions it can do, right, there's certain classifications. I'll give you a list, right. Yeah, there we go. So I'll just put it back to ground for now. And then, of course, there's the actual unit type. As you can see, I'll just stick it back to ground for now. There's speed of the unit, right? This, you've got a selection of various speeds. I'm just going to put it back to 2 for now. This is the sound effect the unit will make when you click on it normally. Bing automatically will not play any sound. It's just built that way. So if you want a different sound, do that. This is the cost. This is the upkeep. So your population, right? Every unit will have some kind of cost, and right now it's generically just set to 1 upkeep for easy. This is the number of frames for its animation. It's a good thing to keep in mind, right? How many hit points, the building that is required to build it, and its striking range, basically how many tiles from itself can it hit. So at 1, it's basically a melee unit essentially. Okay. Buildings is quite similar. There's some slight differences, right? You got your building type, ground air for if it's that's more for if it's a turret or not, so you don't have to worry too much about that. This is more, what you want for which kind of basic building you're using. We're just going to keep that at factory. But it's quite similar. This here will tell you what buildings it will build, if any, and what prerequisite buildings it needs to be constructed. You also have to set right here the tile width, so it knows how big the building actually is when it's, being placed. Pretty simple, Yeah, various things like this, right? You can set the upkeep if you want, and that would be its support amount, right? Because if you set the building type to say support and you set that upkeep to that, it's going to increase your upkeep by that much, right? So yeah, pretty similar. Now actions is a little different. You got to name your action like everything else, right? You got a source graphic. You'll have its damage. So that's basically how strong it is, how frequently it can be fired, how long it'll live, what type, right? As you can see, all right, let's put it to ground. Ground unit is obviously only hits grounds. Air unit would hit ground, yeah. Same, right? You got to tell it how many frames of animation it's got. Okay. Damage effect is pretty straightforward. You name it, you give it a source, a sound effect if you really want one, and a number of frames. Do that really basic. You just feed in a very simple, it's a 2-frame animation, what's the word for it? Sprite sheet. You tell it if it's shifted or not. So that means if it's shifted, basically it's designed to have 2 sizes of doodads. The doodads will either be, too high or only 1. So this makes it so you can have things walk behind it. You name it and stuff, and right now it's just generic cactus and stuff, right? So here's the map editor. As you can see, I've got some very simple tiles for this. This is all very, thrown together for that sort of stuff. This will generate a random map essentially for you with very little. There's fill just to fill that layer. You've got several layers of tiles, so you can give a layered effect to your maps, right? You save, you load, you new, right? All that standard stuff. You place tiles, you place doodads. Now, missions. Missions is a little more complex. Missions, yeah. So there's certain things you'd have to do. This is your map name, right? You load a map in for a mission, and then this is the mission name you give it. This is the amount of resources you would start with, right? This is your start position, right? You can change that. This is the current object you are trying to place. So when you click that, you will select an object in place, and that is somewhat dependent on what faction you've picked, right? Because these will change depending on the faction name, so that won't be too confusing for you. Then, of course, you pick what type of thing you're going to put down, right? Your trigger is something, if you hit it, that gives you victory. Start is where player that you are currently working with is going to start. Booms are the resource field source, right? A field, I guess, seed, right? We got here your 4 basic types of missions. So you can defeat all enemies, you can destroy a certain target, right? Or get to a target, not destroy. Survive X amount of time, right? Or the economic one where you reach a certain amount of money. And here we got the 3 basic AI types. So standard is pretty simple. It will build to the max of its tech tree, whatever that is. Right? You've got a maximum tech tree it can do. It'll work toward that. And it will also, when it has enough units to figure exact numbers, it will send out a scout, try and find your base, and when it finds your base, it will try and send some units to kill you. Turtle is pretty much standard turtle, but double the number of turrets this guy will build, right? So, and it won't actually send out units to go out for you and find you. It will not scout. But if it sees you guys, it will come after you. The entire army of it will basically come after you. It's very aggressive that way. And Skirmisher is kind of like the standard, but it won't build the full tech tree. It'll build a couple buildings in. I think it builds the first 2 factory-type buildings, if I remember correctly. And then it just starts putting out small groups of guys to go find you when it knows where you are. Because if it doesn't know where you are, it's going to send out a scout. And scouts will always be your, worker class. Right? Whatever your worker class, because there's a worker class that builds for you, and there's a harvester class that goes out and harvests resources. So yeah, that's more or less a rundown of how this whole engine is going to works and how you can build an RTS. If you want to examine details of various pre-built pieces, go ahead and load the awesome RTS template, which will be automatically saved at C:/games with a capital G / awesome RTS. You go there, you'll see it. You can load it in to the editor, right? You go to the project, you click the name, well, you click load, and then you click the source and all that, right? You load it in, it'll fill in the fields of this stuff right here because it's already been preloaded. And yeah, that's more or less it. Thanks for watching.